Limitless energy.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another top 5 talking points from this week's Spanish Grand Prix. Apologies to those that perhaps just saw a few technical gremlins, should we say. That is the complex nature of YouTube's live streaming platform. But anyway, we're here now, we're live, hopefully. Welcome along everyone, and of course, as always, we've got joining us right below is Rwaggy.
Hello, are we all right?
Oh, we can
Did
hear
you get everything you wanted?
It's beautiful. It actually works.
Good.
Technology, it's wonderful. Anyway, guys, well, I thought a good race today. It was kind of going the way of the typical Spanish Grand Prix about halfway through, wasn't it? We were all sort of looking at our watches going, yeah. But actually, good race by the end. And as I said last time, if the last race was a dull race, F1's in good hands at the moment. And in the end, rang out to be true today. And yeah, overall for me, good race. I think definitely the close fight at the front is helping a lot. You know, Verstappen versus Hamilton, always going to be an epic battle when they're in such equal cars. But yeah, I mean, let's just jump straight on into it, shall we? I'm going to jump straight in with a top talking point, which I haven't actually got on my screen because I am an absolute amateur. Here we go. Okay, my first one is the battle of the second drivers. Now, we spoke about this quite a lot over the last few streams, haven't we? We're always going on about Bottas and Perez. And today showed exactly why we're always going on about them, because they are going to make a big difference in today's fight. I am pretty certain that Bottas effectively won Hamilton the race today. He was sitting in an annoying place where Red Bull couldn't pit Verstappen just in case they couldn't get past Bottas, whereas Mercedes were fine to do that because they were able to dish out team orders. Now, obviously, Bottas may not have listened to those team orders. It was a bit of a dodgy one, doesn't he? Clearly didn't let him pass that easily. Certainly cost him a little bit of time, probably 1 to 2 seconds or so in the race, but eventually did get past him fairly easily. But yes, to me, it was absolutely Bottas that won the race for that exact reason. I even tweeted out during the race saying Mercedes should win this now because Bottas is right there. And as I said, that was stopping Verstappen being able to pit. Whereas Perez, bit of an off weekend for Perez, wasn't it, if we're being honest? Yeah, how he qualified down in 8th, not really good enough. Ended up finishing 5th. He had an okay race considering how hard it is to overtake, but just wasn't able to really get in the mix at the front, and it was just causing it to be 2v1 once again at the front. And again, that is what they pay Bottas for, to be right up there. So for me, that was a real pivotal moment in this race, and you know, they employed Perez to do what Bottas does, or better, to be reliable, to always be there, to be putting a thorn in Mercedes' side. He's not doing that yet. Hopefully he can start to do it soon. And Bottas, to me, did it perfectly. Do you agree, Rwaggy? Did you think that Bottas effectively won Hamilton the race today?
As much as I didn't want to, yeah, I think that's exactly how it panned out. Bottas really did not want to be in the position he was. Again, rear gunner for Hamilton. It's frustrating for him because you know you want him to win races, but I want to be honest, he's not capable. With the talent of drivers that are out there right now, he's not capable. I've talked about him plenty of times and said I would actually put him quite far down in comparison to the whole driver grid as to driver skill. But regardless, he's
give us
where
a number.
He is, yeah,
out of 20 then, where is Bottas?
I'd probably say like 8th, 9th. Probably say.
Yeah, probably.
I reckon he's about 8th or 9th, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, there's just too many people. Like Charles Leclerc, I'd say, is a better driver, just has a really bad car. George Russell, I would even say, is a better driver. Lando Norris even is a better driver. There's just so many other drivers out there, obviously Verstappen, Hamilton. I would even say Perez is better than Bottas. Yes, today wasn't necessarily a respective show of that. And yeah, I think Bottas wasn't on his game. Sorry, Perez wasn't on his game at all today. Really needed to be up there helping Verstappen. And like you said, 2v1 really did kind of show that Verstappen was doing a really difficult job. And I think, in all honesty, I put the blame on Red Bull today. I think, yes, Perez would have been useful if he was up there to try and help Verstappen. But I think realistically, the whole situation falls down to Red Bull's decision not to pit Verstappen. Granted, Hamilton did box before Verstappen, and that kind of then threw Red Bull into an awkward situation. But we have seen this before. This is exactly what happened in Hungary in 2019. And again, Verstappen couldn't box. He was told not to box. He was told to carry on. And again, they said, "Oh, he'll only be able to catch you on the last lap." And again, he caught them way before the last lap. And again, he ended up having to pit once more to get himself the fastest lap point. But from where I sit, you're not going to win these races without taking some risks. And I think the risk that they took wasn't calculated because of the fact that they repeated what they already knew was going to happen. And even though Hamilton did box the lap before, well, undercut effectively, Verstappen, I think, still had enough pace in that car to be able to compete with Hamilton and actually close back in on him. When it comes down to that race pace, I feel like Verstappen is that bit better than Hamilton when he's pushing flat out. When it's all about being as fast as you possibly can, I think Verstappen is actually better than Hamilton. I think Hamilton is just that little bit better when it comes to the tire management side of things, despite his claims to Bono. I think Hamilton is just that bit better when it comes to the mechanics side of things that is now F1, so fuel management, tire management, etc.
Yeah, I would say Verstappen is better in some ways. I would say pace, it's hard to split them, and maybe Verstappen might have maybe the edge on outright pace, which is saying something considering how bloody good Hamilton is on outright pace. I would say Verstappen, he's very aggressive, and that really plays to his strengths. I mean, look at turn one today. He really forced his way through there. And you just knew, when they were side by side, you knew that Verstappen was going to come out on top. He was on the inside, and you know that he's just going to outbrake him and just push him off no matter what. It's going to happen. And that is really beneficial. I think Hamilton's very calculated in that respect. I think Hamilton would only do that kind of move if he absolutely needs to, because he's already thinking about the championship. He's very smart. I would say Hamilton's still better the overall driver, though, just mainly because of experience, honestly. Like you said, better with tyres, better with strategy management, better race management. Like he just bosses it at the moment. It's like before every season he looks back at every single season he's done before and makes sure that he learns every single lesson that he's ever learnt and then puts them into practice. And he's really genuinely learned from everything he's done, which I find really interesting. But I'm interested to hear you say you basically thought Red Bull lost the race today more than Mercedes stole it off them. I'm not sure I agree. So you think Verstappen could have stopped a second time and still won the race?
I think he could have stopped the lap after Hamilton did, and the gap wouldn't have been significant enough for Hamilton to be gone. Yes, of course, it caught Red Bull off guard, but look at it as in the respect of the whole situation that happened, right? Verstappen started managing his tyres, and he lost too much of a gap, right? He couldn't keep the tyres good enough for him to be able to maintain enough pace, and I think he was so worried about whether or not he could take the tyres to the end and be competitive that he ended up losing far more time than he necessarily should have done. At the same time, I think when it came to the point of it's time to push now, his tyres weren't capable. It's not that he hadn't saved enough life in those tyres to get to the end of the race, because he had that. That was already a given. Otherwise, they would never have done that strategy in the first place. He didn't have enough tyre life to be able to then compete. So the whole point of him saving the tyres was to make sure that he could then compete with Hamilton when Hamilton then closed up to him. But he couldn't. Hamilton literally just cruised past him, and that was it, done and dusted. So you ask the question of what was Verstappen actually saving for, realistically? Because nothing was to be saved. If he was trying to get the sides to the end of the race, why would he be on the strategy in the first place, right? It just seems odd to me. So from where I sit, Hamilton, yes, pits. Okay, he pitted before Verstappen did. Verstappen needed to look at that situation and either go get into the box here, get onto the same tyres as he is, and just give it everything, because that's effectively what Hamilton did. He was unleashed to do whatever he wanted. He didn't have to worry about tire management, he didn't have to worry about fuel, he didn't have to worry about any of that sort of stuff. He just had to give it the full beans. And I'll say this every single time it comes down to it. I honestly think when it comes down to that raw, natural race pace, just giving it full beans, I pitch Verstappen as the better driver. And, look at the gap at the end of it. 15.8 seconds was all it was between Hamilton and Verstappen. It's about 21, 22 second gap. Drop when you have a pit stop, I think, thereabouts. So he closed in so much time in 5 laps, because it was lap 60, I think, when Hamilton passed Verstappen, and then the decision was
he was on softs, and Hamilton was obviously cruising at that point. But I don't agree. I don't think they could have taken it. I think the AWS graphic was slightly wrong today, because Hamilton, when he boxed the second time, he was right behind Verstappen. Verstappen had just got in traffic in the final sector. He said after the race, I might have actually been able to get him then, but I trusted my team and came in anyway. Obviously, with hindsight, he's glad he did that. But he was only 8 tenths away. He was really close to Verstappen when he came in the box. Verstappen then had a bit of traffic, but then he would have got DRS. That gains you about half a second down a pit straight or so, I think, on this track. So he was theoretically 1.3 seconds ahead. But then Hamilton had his outlap on, I don't actually think they were quite brand new, but nearly new medium tyres. And we saw how powerful the undercut was. We also saw how powerful the Mercedes was. The Mercedes had good pace today. They had better race pace than the Red Bull. I've got no doubt about that, in Hamilton's hands at least. I think there was a chance he could have got it. I think it would have been rolling the dice to box the lap after Hamilton. And they were like, well, hey, look, why would we roll the dice? We've seen Hamilton close in at us at 1.4 seconds per lap, and then arrive at our rear wing and not be able to get past. Why would we roll the dice and potentially throw the win? Because they've got better pace. If we come out in second, that's it. P2 is our maximum. I think they did roll the dice by staying out, because it was too much of a risk to come in, and they thought, look, well, let's just stay out. We guaranteed to keep the lead, and we just got to hope the tyres last, hope that the dirty air's enough, and that we can somehow hold on to this lead. Obviously, they've got all the live data. They would have known exactly, given a 2.5 second stop, they would have known exactly what it would have been. I think it was too marginal. I honestly, maybe they would have come out of the pits ahead. Maybe they wouldn't have. Hamilton would have had the pace go on the outside. We know Verstappen's aggressive. I don't know. But I honestly think that was too much of a risk. I don't blame them for not doing it. I think they effectively risked it by staying out. It could have worked. In the end, it was actually quite an easy overtake for Hamilton, with obviously benefit of hindsight. But there could have been a safety car, right? It took Hamilton, 10 to 15 laps, I would say, to catch Verstappen. As you said, quicker than we were expecting. That's quite a long time. There could have easily been a safety car or a VSC in that period. Suddenly, Verstappen, brand new tyres, out in the lead again. I think, looking purely statistically, on that lap, on the split second he could have pit or not pit, I think they made the right choice. I don't think they threw it away today. I think that was the right choice. Yes, it was a risk. It was a risk either way. I think this one was more likely to turn out with a win. It didn't. Because, Mercedes had such good pace, and they were on newer, fresher tyres. I honestly can't see... and they also did a decent...
I'm just looking at history.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at history, honestly. Like, it happened already. We pretty much... Crofty even knew. As soon as it happened, he knew straight away. This is exactly what happened in Hungary 2019. Like, this is where there needs to be Red Bull trying something different, because the chances of repeating exactly what happened in Hungary were really high. And I would say that Hungary's probably got more of a chance of a safety car than Spain does, in my opinion, anyway. But realistically, it's not right for you to try and it's not logical for you to try and bank on there being a safety car or a virtual safety car. It just doesn't make sense for you to
I don't think they necessarily banked on that. I think they were looking at the data
I don't think they did either.
I reckon they looked at data and saw with a 2 second stop we could get ahead of him. 2.5 second, maybe 3 second, no. And they just thought, if it ends up being a no, and it was basically a 50-50 chance, if they do get in P2, that was it. The race was gone. They knew they did not have the Mercedes pace today. Max said himself over the radio, these Mercedes have got some serious grip. And you saw, even around Spain, he was able to keep around a second consistently and still keep the tyres to after he boxed, which is insane. They definitely have better pace today. I honestly think... Yeah. I agree with you, is that, you try and do something different, but I just think they didn't have a choice today, really. Without taking an even bigger risk than the risk they ended up taking by boxing him, because that would have been it.
Yeah,
it'd have been different if they had a quicker car. If they genuinely thought they had a quicker car today, or even an equal car to Mercedes, then maybe it's worth the risk a bit more, because maybe Max can get him back or whatever. But anyway, come back to the original point. I think definitely Bottas is the one that secured it today, and Bottas proved today why they hire him. Right? I mean, They don't want him to lose out in turn 1. However, they don't want him to crash out in turn 1 more than they want him to be P4 in turn 1. So it was a we've seen it before, but you expect more, don't you, from a Mercedes driver, just letting a Ferrari fly around your outside. It's a good move. It was a great move by Charles, and I'll take nothing away from him. But would Verstappen or Hamilton allow the same thing? Absolutely not, in my opinion. They would have been pushing him right off the track. That would have been no 100%. Way. But again, that's why they employ Bottas for me. Is he will avoid the incident, and he will be there or thereabouts, and more often than not, he'll be the thorn in Red Bull's side, just like he was today.
I think the one thing I really want to take away from this, and be ready with your Control C, Control V here. Are you ready? The one thing I think you can take away from this is the fact that we're having this length of a discussion about the decisions made was purely shows that TYRE really makes a massive difference when it comes to a good race, in my opinion. Go. Paste.
I didn't even realize that was aimed at me.
That's why I said get your Control C, Control V ready.
I just didn't know that was aimed at me. However, Raggy's becoming the master of the segue into the next section. So I'm just a terrible host, it seems, because I was not on the ball there, clearly. But my second point...
I even told you to do it.
You did. Oh, yeah, my bad. Is TYRE key to a good race? I actually thought we would have opposing opinions on this, but your little comment there would suggest we don't. I am very much for tyre wear, artificially high tyre wear. Pirelli, everyone's like, oh, Pirelli are rubbish. They could make tyres that last the whole race. They were told by F1, make tyres that last this long. Give us 2-stop races. That was a few years ago now. I think that kind of mandate has fallen by the wayside a little bit. I don't know exactly what their mandate is anymore. I just don't think they've got a set mandate anymore. But to me, tyre wear is crucial to Formula 1 in its current form, at least. Next year, maybe it'll be different. But we saw today, the first half of the race, that's what you get with tyres that don't degrade, tyres that are infinitely whatever. There's no overtaking. There's no variation. Almost everyone started on the softs. Raikkonen was the only person to start on the mediums, despite half the field having a choice. Everybody started on the softs. Everybody aimed for a 1-stop. Most people ended up on a 2-stop, but everybody did the same thing. That is what you get with tyres that last forever. If you have tyres that are always middle of a 2-stop, and by that I mean 2-stop is your preferred. You can do a 3-stop, you can do a 1-stop, but 2-stop is right in the middle, so it's kind of either side. Today it was in the middle between a 1 and a 2, which, to be fair, it turned out right, so I'm glad that there was enough tyre wear today. But I think we should have more of it. I think we should go back to every race being the 2-stop is the default strategy. We've slipped back into 1-stop being the default strategy, which to me, you're opening yourself up to have boring races. Yes, it's artificial, but then normally people that say, oh, it's artificial, they prefer to bring back refueling. Well, that's artificial as well. You're putting weight in the car to slow them down. I mean, if you want straight out fighting, neither of those things are it. And for me, tyre wear is great because refueling is a solution, but tyre wear is more up to the driver. Refueling is more up to the strategists, and the driver still goes out and drives flat out with their given weight of their car. Tyres are all about the driver. Now, I don't think one thing I want to add to this is they need to be careful with temperature-led degradation, because it's not right that the tyres overheat super easy. As soon as you get into the dirty of another car, the tyres overheat and you haven't got the pace anymore. That needs to go. The tyres need to have a really broad operating window. In terms of wear, though, to me, 2-stop. It just creates better racing. Again, this race is just the perfect example. First half is what you get when you don't have any tyre wear. Second half is what you get when you have decent amount of tyre wear and 1 or 2 or 3 stops. Look how varied it was. Do you remember that little incident a couple of laps before the end? There was like 5 cars battling out for, all right, only P10, but 5 cars. They're all in amongst each other, all just caused a bit of carnage, and that was all tyre wear. All of that was tyre wear. But in the first half of the race, we saw none of that. It was an absolute procession. In fact, the gaps, even at the end here, are pretty insane. Slightly separate point, but I was surprised how big the gaps were. I mean, obviously there was various stops, but Leclerc ended up 54 seconds back from Hamilton. 10 seconds back from him was Perez. 10 seconds back from him was Ricciardo. Then Sainz was quite close to Ricciardo, but the gaps were bigger than we've seen so far this season, which I think is probably down to everyone starting on the same tyre, I imagine. But yeah, I haven't really got a question for you there, Raggy, but what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think ultimately you're right. F1 is very key when it comes down to tyre wear. I think F1 should take a little bit of a leaf out of GT3 books, because those tyres can go a very long distance. But it's not in a way that you would want to. What I mean is the drivers are allowed to just give it all the time, or most of the time, right? And it kind of in F1, it shuts down a lot of the battling because everyone's playing their own game, everyone's playing their own strategy, and so that because they're trying to manage the tires to be in a different position and they're fighting relative to their overall. There's no opportunity for anyone to really feel the need to go for it, properly push it. Apart from like today, we saw Hamilton, who was finally unleashed to be able to just give it everything every lap, and the teams were like, as long as you can nail these laps, we'll be fine. And he went off and did it, and I guarantee you that win for him felt way better than most other wins he's ever had, because of just how hard he had to work for it. And that's ultimately, I want to see drivers having to work for their race rather than just managing their tires and just nailing those consistent lap times over and over and over again, which is good for the most part. This is where, because I would say that even the 100% races that we've got obviously here are considered endurance, I guess, to an extent, given the G-forces that they have to face. It's still relatively a bit of a sprint. And I think they do really need to be in a position where the tire wear is high enough for them to need to worry about that. They've really got to give it as good a push as they possibly can. But because of the fact that the two-stop came into it, it really made the whole race so much more than it was going to be, because there were already questions as to whether or not Hamilton was going to catch up, and the suspense is what makes it even more enjoyable. It's the not knowing. Chaos is what I like when it comes to F1. When you don't know what is going to happen next, that's when F1 is at its best. Yeah,
I completely agree. And you kind of said it there, as you enjoy GT cars, you enjoy people being flat out, etc. But it creates an element of something you can't see, doesn't it? If a driver's looking after his tyres really well in the first stint, but actually there's no overtaking, that they're 2 seconds apart, there's no overtaking, whatever, boring. But then suddenly, at the end of the stint, it livens up because that person goes, right, I've looked after my tyres, I've been keeping this in the bag, I'm ready now, I'm going to attack. And it adds an unknown, which I think is something you just said there. It adds an unknown of someone looking after the tyres, and it just adds an extra element to the racing. Maybe next year we won't need it. Maybe next year the cars will be able to follow closely and it'll be epic. But to be honest, for me, just cars... F1 isn't a spec series sport, right? Cars being able to follow closely is certainly desirable. It won't fix a sport. You can't then go, okay, have infinitely durable tyres, have enough fuel that you don't need to manage your fuel, etc., etc. Because like in qualifying, they'll ultimately end up shuffling themselves into speed order, and then you're not going to get any racing. Even within teams, even the teammates are insanely close, if they're half a tenth a lap apart, they'll slowly just drift away from each other, and that'll be that. Yeah. Hamilton will be in front of Bottas. Absolutely. Verstappen will then be just behind them, then Perez just behind them, and it will just be a train. It will be Noah's Ark style train. So you do need something to spice it up, regardless how close you can follow. So for me, it's been a while, hasn't it? When was the last time we saw consistent two-stop races? One-stop races have been the norm for a few years now.
I don't know. A long time ago.
They have been definitely the norm. The one-stop is the default, isn't it? And then two-stop if you're really in trouble. Three-stop if it's a safety car has been the norm. Yeah. I think it might have even been back in 2012, 2013. Must have been somewhere in the modern era.
Well, Yanab says 2016 was the last time, apparently.
Okay, so 2016 was the last time we had two stops. And that was a good year, wasn't it? That was a hell of a good year. We had a great title fight. But
oh, yeah, I just remembered who that was. Yes, that was a very good year. Lots of drama. But I mean, that's the thing. There was drama on and off the circuit, and that ultimately made it so much more enjoyable. There's a lot of challenges that each driver had in that respect, and I think one of the main reasons that Verstappen is considered the underdog, and also along with Red Bull, I guess, is because of the fact that he's having to be flat out all the time. Yes, he's managing his tires, but because of the pace that he's got, if he's always charging for that P1, that he will work his backside off for it no matter what happens.
To me as well, I actually enjoy the skill of someone being able to manage their tires. I mean, I think I'm a bit of a I don't know if purist is the right word, but a bit of a nerd in that respect. In that, it might be more from me doing my own racing. Is it's satisfying when you can look after your tires and just keep them in. It's a real skill. Driving flat out isn't the only skill. It's a real skill being able to drive with the tires, and it's something that Hamilton has absolutely mastered. But anyway, moving on to our next point. Our third point is new turn 10 layout, better or worse. Now, obviously, we saw in Spain this year, brand new turn 10 layout. We've had for quite a few years the same layout of Spain, which they effectively adapted for. It was for F1 originally with the final chicane and the turn 10 layout, which was a much more 90-degree corner. this year they replaced it. I don't think they actually went to the old layout. I think they went for a different layout completely, which was more like the old layout, but I don't think it was the same as the old layout. Where it was a medium speed corner where they swoop around the corner rather than kind of stopping and getting it turned more 90 degrees. There was the hope that this would make it racing a bit closer. For me, I don't. It maybe might have made it a little bit closer, maybe, but it wasn't. It's not like it really bunched them up. I don't think it made a massive difference. However, I prefer it, and I'm going to turn this into a discussion generally about the Spanish Grand Prix layout, which I know Rwaggy is something Rwaggy feels very passionately about. I actually like the Spanish Grand Prix layout. I think it's a great Grand Prix circuit. Look at turn 3. They are flat out through there these days, which is insane. Look at turn 9, the one just for the second DRS zone, flat out through there. It's an insane test of a modern Formula 1 car. There's so many corners that I imagine, Brundle said it during qualifying, these are lucky boys. Flat out to turn 3, are you joking? And he's one that's driven an F1 car. It's an insane track. I think it suits F1 cars so well. The issue is, people can't follow. There's two issues. One of them is people can't follow. Another one is the final chicane. For me, is if you get rid of the final chicane and go back to the old layout, or an alternative layout, perhaps, I don't know, not the final chicane. Because I was noticing in the race, Hamilton would get to about 7 or 8 tenths from Verstappen coming into the final chicane. Then after the final chicane, he was consistently losing 2 tenths of a second through one tiny chicane. Which doesn't make any sense logically, because they're going relatively slow through there. You think the dirtier would be less. But I think it's because of the nature of the curbs. It's very much a one-line corner, and you have to follow exactly the wheel tracks of the car ahead. Where somewhere like the new turn 10, I was seeing there was a couple of different lines. Verstappen was able to take a slightly different line to... Hamilton was able to take a slightly different line to Verstappen and keep it slightly tighter just to get that cleaner air. For me, if you get rid of the final chicane, I think I really like Spain. It's something Rwaggy is, yes, I mean, look at that face. It's something he's going to disagree with, but watching it today, I liked it. If you could make people follow, maybe the final chicane fixes that, and then get rid of the final chicane just so it's nicer to drive. I think turn 10 is a big improvement in both regards. Rwaggy, take it away.
You're just wrong, okay? This track sucked. No, all right. I'll be honest, because I just moan and groan about Barcelona circuit in general, but I agree. Turn 1 to 3 is fantastic. It's a really, really enjoyable section of the track that, yes, even me, someone who doesn't like Catalonia, will say that is actually really quite a fun area. Turn 4, not so bad. Turn 5, pretty good. Turn 6, 7, which I think is the chicane, unless you can.
Yeah, rubbish in the F1 game, but that's because of camber. I think it's a good corner,
yes.
But yeah, in the F1 game it is rubbish.
Yeah, in the F1 game it's horrific, but IRL, it's actually not so bad because of the way that you can take the line through there. Turn 9, very fun. Turn 10 for me should have stayed as it was. That wasn't the problem area for Barcelona, because that actually was one of the main areas to do an overtake. I think the DRS kind of did help a little bit, but in order to assist with overtaking specifically, hard and heavy braking zones are actually really crucial for F1 specifically to go for an overtaking. Being the way that turn 10 is now, yes, you still have to brake relatively quite hard. You drop a lot of speed, but not quite as much as you did before, because that hairpin was like almost completely 180. But now it's more carry a fair bit of pace through it. You can actually, enjoy it a lot more. And I think the next chicane that in the old layout, as in what's in the 2020 game, that little chicane after that hairpin, I think that could have been reworked slightly as well, but still kept to an extent. It's the final chicane that's the problem.
Okay,
like said,
wait, pause, because I know you're going to want to say a lot about the final chicane. I want to go back to turn 10, because I do agree. I think, yeah, definitely a 90-degree left and heavy braking definitely helps, or more than 90, isn't it? But heavy braking is important. However, today we saw, I think, 2 people get even close into turn 10. One of which was the 2 Mercedes. I do think Bottas helped a little bit, just emphasis on the little. And then we saw when Alonso was bottling 5 cars up with all different tire wears. We didn't see anyone else even get close into turn 10. And it's not because, to me, it's not because there was less braking. It's because of turn 9. It's just flat before that, and it's a single line corner. I'm not complaining about turn 9, but I'm saying I don't think turn 10 is really that much of an overtaking opportunity as it was. However, I do agree that just after turn 10, what was the old turn 11? If you perhaps straighten that a bit, maybe the whole section becomes better. But I think the new turn 10 is more flowing, and I think it would feel better to drive. Hoping it's in the F1 2021 game, so we can give it a go ourselves. What do you think turn 10's more flowing now?
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, as a track to just do a lap on your run, that area of turn 10 and now into turn 11 is actually really quite nice. It's not, it's quite a nice flowy area. I mean, that's one of the main reasons I like Zandvoort, is because it's a very flowy track. But for racing, it's horrible because you can't overtake. And that's ultimately what you guys, for F1, you got to ask yourself, like, what do you want more than anything? Do you want to see drivers giving it the full beans in the qualifying, or do you want to see drivers being able to attack each other constantly in the race? And for me, Spain doesn't really give you the opportunity to just constantly, or not now at least, not with the new layout. It kind of shuts it down a little bit, makes it harder for you to actually go for these overtakes a bit more. I mean, it's all basically, it's like Baku. Most of the overtakes are going to be done on the home straight because of how long that DRS is. Yeah, I mean, look at that. Look at the picture you just brought up there. It's a prime example. That long sweep through there, yes, it makes it really enjoyable as a driver to go through. But from a battling perspective, which is the bit that, if you're wanting to try and increase overtakes, then that doesn't really give you more opportunity.
How about the gravel, though?
I like the gravel. The gravel is good. I mean, a lot of people would agree with this. For me, you either need walls as the track limits, or you need gravel as the track limits. But basically, they need to be punished for extending. Like, this is one of the main reasons I hate Paul Ricard, because it's just an airfield with paint on it. That's all it basically is. You put down gravel in these areas where they can't step out wide, you'll start realizing people definitely keep within those track limits. There's not going to be any question as to whether or not they've breached it or not. And there's also going to be drivers making sure they don't breach it, because they will not just lose time, they run the risk of binning their car. And that makes that, again, it adds to that suspense factor, adds to the opportunity for safety cars to be created, because it means that, obviously there's no risk to any health there, because they're literally going into gravel, which is designed to stop them. But it also makes it so that if they do get themselves stuck in there, safety car comes in, throws the race up in the air again, and nobody knows what's going to happen next. Like what we saw in Monza last year, where it ended up being one of the craziest races we've seen last 4 seasons, maybe I'd say. It was fantastic.
So on the gravel point, I guess that's a bit of a separate point, but on the gravel point, there's clearly a lot of considerations there. There's a very good reason that they've introduced tarmac in a lot of runoff areas, and it's not so cars don't retire, cars don't get punished for going off track. Obviously, it's not something they're going to do willingly. Bike racing, I know, needs gravel more than tarmac, because obviously bikes can't, if you fall off at 200 miles an hour on a bike and it's gravel, it's not going to slow down really on gravel. So bike race, I know, needs gravel. However, I don't necessarily agree that it's just gravel or walls. I think there's a lot of other potential things you could do, like perhaps a 2-meter strip of AstroTurf, that if you do go out wide, you're going to lose time and you're going to have to go all the way out wide. Something like that, I don't know. Just something that I do agree. They need to be punished, going off track. But yeah, clearly, there's a lot of considerations there, which obviously we're not necessarily privy to. We're just not really aware of in terms of what it'd be. But I mean, look at the size of that gravel trap there. It's absolutely huge. And they always cite danger as the reason that they can't use the old last 2 corners, because there just isn't enough runoff area there, which is fair. But I just feel like there must be a better solution than that chicane. I mean, just change the chicane. Just make it less tight of a chicane, maybe. I don't know. Look at all the space they've got there. The whole area from the turn right, and let me get it up here. The whole area from the turn right, well, what turn's going to be? 10, 11, like 12 and 13, 10, 13 maybe. That whole area is all gravel. It's tarmac, asphalt. They've got so much room to do different ideas, and they're just not doing any of them. I can't really find a good picture of it here, but here we go. This one will do. Sorry, Rwaggy will be 10 seconds behind. He actually watches the stream for the visuals. So all of this area. So the route they've set out here. Can you see my mouse? You can. That's what they do at the moment. This is the old style out here. They've got another chicane in the middle, which they also don't use. Just do something different. Just do a fast chicane, maybe. We should see chicanes all over loads of other tracks. They're not normally as hated as they are this chicane. And I don't believe it's just nostalgia that makes this chicane so hated. So there must be something you can do, and you can see why they need to do it, because look at the lack of gravel here, right? I mean, coming out of turn 12 here, they're going to be going so fast here that this would be probably 170, 180 mile an hour corner, turn 13. There just isn't enough runoff area there. It's a bike racing circuit as well, so they can't just replace it with tarmac. By the way, that's probably a big reason they do replace it with tarmac, is because in those sort of corners, if you make a mistake, you can just gather it up and get on with your life. But gravel, they do punish mistakes harshly. But in that case, if F1 car, if you're doing 180 miles an hour there and you make a minor mistake, you're in the wall at 150 miles an hour still, which is just obviously horribly dangerous. But so you can see why they need to do something other than do that layout. But there must be something else they can do. I mean, what do you think about just having a faster chicane there, Rwaggy? Something like that, with friendlier curbs that you can mount more, not just huge sausage curbs.
For me, the issue isn't that it needs to be fast. For me, the issue is there needs to be the ability to battle through there, right? Like, if you extend, so what is currently there isn't necessarily a bad idea. I think the chicane is a good idea. I think it just needs widening on both parts. So yes, it will speed the chicane up a little bit by it being a little bit wider. It becomes a bit more of a fast chicane. But at least then, if you're coming through turn 13 and you happen to be side by side with somebody, it then opens up the opportunity to still continue that side by side throughout, and then makes it really good. But I think, regardless, that area is a really difficult area to make enjoyable. I personally would just extend that chicane, like I said, make it wider so that they can be that little bit quicker. Yes, I know that there's not that much of a runoff going through the final corner, and again, sort of understand and agree that that's bad, whatever, but I don't think it's going to increase the speed that much enough, but I think it will drastically change the way that the track is raced on. I would like to see that personally.
Yeah, I think they need to do something, because, I mean, we did have a good race in the end today. As we said, that was down to tyres. For me, one of the things, it actually brings me on nice onto my next point. I was just going to naturally bring up my next point. This is how well I've written my notes today. You see, I've actually done a bit of a later stream today, and I'm actually ready for this stream. You'll love to see it. But my next talking point, which is going to segue nicely, is number 4. Should we do something different on boring tracks? Because, we know the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Yes, we had a good race today. I'm not saying we had a rubbish race today. However, without some good tyre wear today, we'd have been in trouble, which means the track doesn't provide good racing naturally. We have to force good racing. Whereas other circuits, I mean, Monza obviously springs to mind, Spa springs to mind, Silverstone, not known for its being easy to follow. However, we always have good races there. There's lots of tracks that just are inherently good at racing, yet there's always other factors. If you build cars that have got horrible dirty air, you can't get within 2 seconds, no track's going to be good, obviously. It's relative. But this track is one of the worst, along with Monaco. Someone's moaning about Monaco a moment ago. So, do we do something different, like the chicane? So I put my notes here, change the layouts. We just spoke about there. They've changed turn 10, which I think, give it a go. Spanish Grand Prix is often known for being boring. Everybody moans about, Spanish Grand Prix, no overtaking. It's known for that. So why just stay with the same layout year after year? They changed turn 10 this year. That's a good change. This year was good, so maybe next year stick with it. If next year's race is boring, maybe the year after that go, okay, well, we're going to change chicanes. But why has it taken, how long were we using the previous layout for? 10 years or so? Maybe not quite.
I think so,
that.
Yeah.
It's probably around 10 years. 10 years to make it to the extent that everyone's thinking Barcelona, Spanish Grand Prix, boring. That's what springs to everyone's mind. Why not do something? I'm glad they finally did, but should we be a bit more consistent with that? Change things up. Every year, change something. Paul Ricard is a perfect example of that. Rwaggy brought it up, and I agree. I hate that track. They've got about 100 different layouts they could use for Paul Ricard. Why are we racing on the same layout? Now, I will say, obviously, the FIA have to grade. It has to be a grade 1 circuit in order for F1 to race there. There's a whole process involved. Like, obviously, it's not as easy as just going, let's just use that one, no worries. But, it's F1. It's the pinnacle of motorsport. Do something. Surely you don't want your track to be known as the boring track. Unless it's Monaco. I will say, for me, Monaco's different because Monaco is about the peril of the barriers being so damn close. It's such a bumpy track. It's the barriers are so close, the track's so narrow. Monaco is the art of threading it between those barriers without hitting them, and that is, to me, I enjoy the Monaco Grand Prix because that is the art. Is to win a race, you have to do nearly 80 laps, but on that circuit in really fast cars. So different point. We'll get to that probably in the next race. So do we choose something different? I've written another note here which I brought up on Twitter during the race. Joker laps. Pretty wild idea. Don't get me wrong. I'll get Rwaggy's thoughts on these 2 points in a minute. But Joker laps. I mean, do something different. Formula E has this. I watched Formula E this weekend. I actually kind of enjoyed it, although I don't love Formula E generally. They have the weird fan boost thing where you have to go wide. Why not say sort of almost like Rallycross, on certain tracks. Just try it, because why not? Again, we got lucky. We had a good race today. The track circuit maybe isn't good for that. Just say, hey, look, once per race, twice per race, 5 times per race, you have to go round. Say we could do it at turn 12. Maybe, I don't know. So let's say turn 12. You have to go right round the outside of turn 12. So there could be 3 points throughout the corner. You have to hit all 3 of those points, very similar to Formula E. And you have to do that 5 times in order for your race to not get disqualified, essentially, from your race. Obviously not in a safety car, etc., etc. Because think about today's race, all right? Let's say it was just a boring one stop. Verstappen probably would have won, because there was nothing Hamilton could have done. If it was a bang on one stop, the tyres lasted forever, Verstappen could have won. So if you had a joker lap, however, that was, say, 1 second slower, Hamilton could have then taken that joker lap, lost a second, but then probably, because he had enough pace left over, been able to catch up to Verstappen. And then Verstappen maybe could have tried to take his, but then would Hamilton be able to get close enough with some clean air? It would have probably put them side by side if they were a second apart. Don't get me wrong, I'm channeling my inner Bernie Ecclestone here. I'm very aware of that. It is a wild idea. It's potentially gimmicky. But to me, look, let's not do a sprint. Let's not do a knockout qualifying thing. Let's not introduce this for a whole season. At a boring track like Paul Ricard, there's other layouts. Say twice per race, you have to use a different layout of track. It just adds a bit more spice, does it not? What do you think, Raggy?
I think you're insane. It's probably number one. No, I think that's. I agree. There needs to be something different, but I think honestly, it all just stems down to the way that the tires work. You fix Paul Ricard by adding, the tires situation. Right. GT cars around Paul Ricard are absolutely fantastic, right? The track itself sucks, in my opinion. If you just take the layout of the track and put it on somewhere else in a similar sort of style as, like, I don't know, maybe Singapore, for example, as in, the wall's really tight and there's that danger feel to it. It would really add to Paul Ricard and make it more. It would actually be a really good track, and it would actually kind of improve the racing, especially from a GT perspective. It's really, really good. They always have fantastic races at Paul Ricard, 100%. F1 does not. And I think the only difference is the fact that they have to manage the tyres so much. Ultimately, F1's biggest problem is tyre wear. Tyre wear management is too critical to the race. There's very little in the way of letting the driver show who's actually the talent around here. We don't know. It's hard to tell who's holding pace and who's not, because we don't always know exactly what the flat out pace is from these drivers. Obviously, you get the idea in qualifying, but then you got to think about weight and all that kind of stuff. So, from where I sit, you make it so that the tires are actually basically, like you said, the 2-stop has to be the thing, but also make it so that the tires don't actually die off towards the end of that stint. Does that make sense? So that it make it so it's in the rules. Yeah, because like I said, I mean, again, I'm referring to GT racing a lot because I thoroughly enjoy it, and I think it has something in it that F1 doesn't. Is what ticks the box for me. Is that, yes, realistically, in the GT side of things, you can take the tires throughout pretty much the entire race, right? The tires will make it go that far, but it's a regulation that means you have to pit and change your tires, and that for me is what makes the difference, because it means that they can just go absolutely give it the full beans every lap. And that's what we want to see from these drivers. We don't want to see them sitting back, holding on their pace and letting people through because it doesn't play to their driving strategy. Yes, I like the idea of the mental game that comes with F1. That's cool and everything. But at the same time, I really want to see them properly giving it some and driving flat out for the entire hour and a half that is there. That's just my opinion.
So there's understandably been a lot of negativity in the chat to my Joker lap idea.
Because you're insane.
And don't get me wrong, it is a wild idea. I'm very aware of that. People said it's dangerous to do different layouts and stuff. Obviously, people come out the pit lane safe enough, so it wouldn't necessarily have to be dangerous. It would need a lot of thought put into it. Yeah. I would say that idea might be a bit wild, but people are generally a bit too against change. I mean, I think this across all walks of life, new technology. I mean, there's probably not anyone here, but look at the hate for 5G gets just because it's new and different. Oh, it's going to give me cancer. Different discussion. We're not getting to that. But why not give things a go? It as long as it's not dangerous, obviously. And it's not going to, really artificially affect the championship, or not in the final 5 rounds of the championship. Like but somewhere like Barcelona, maybe even Monaco. Although Monaco to me is a bit different. Barcelona, it's known as a boring track. Why not try something wild and different for one race only? If everybody hates it, we never do it again. I love the fact they're trying sprint races. I think they should have gone a bit further with it and doing like reverse grid, but I can understand why they wanted to perhaps do a softer version first, maybe if it works out, and then maybe talk about reverse grids. Also, the teams the top teams would have been against reverse grids, but I just think, I do think now F1's coming out of the other side of being seen as boring. I think F1 is now no longer seen as boring. I think particularly 2014, 2015 type years when Mercedes was dominating, cars couldn't really follow that well. Everyone was like, F1's boring. I do think it's coming out the other side of that now. I think I see less and less of that these days. I see people enjoying it more and more. I don't know what their viewing numbers are like. I don't know if they're going up, but I do think F1's on the positive side now. But for all those years, we had people moaning it's boring. Why not try something? If cars genuinely can't follow, try something. Now's not the right time because we've tried something this year already. We just had a good Spanish Grand Prix. Next year we've got new regulations coming in. Like, I do believe everyone's in good hands. I just think generally, as a sport and as fans, we should be more open to try things. There's been loads of people moaning in this track. I saw someone say, "Oh, well, this will be the last lot of overtaking we see until at least after the next race because it's Monaco." Well, then let's try something in Monaco. Let's do something different. Let's say you have to use all 3 tyre compounds at Monaco. Just try. Just do something,
including wets.
Yeah, sure.
Turn the sprinklers on.
I don't know. I'm a fan of trying things. If there's no point sitting there moaning. If things aren't working out, just try something. Just do something. If everybody hates it, you never do that again. Fine. But if you never know, people might get surprised. For me, one key thing that I've been campaigning for since the introduction of these rules, not campaigning for, but keen for, is the increase of the fuel usage on the engines. Or, I previously said unlimited, maybe not unlimited. Let's say you add 50% to the amount of fuel these engines are allowed to use at any given second, not over the race distance. Very different point. I'll get into that in a minute. So that theoretically will mean probably 50-60% extra power, which is potentially insane. That's potentially too much. Okay, whatever, 20%. So that's why you need a limit, because to stop these engines becoming too insane. But then you keep the same limit of fuel for the race, 110 kilos, I think it is now. Keep that same limit. To me, that solves a lot of the overtaking problems, even with the current cars, because Hamilton following Verstappen, could decide to turn up his engine to about 1,300 horsepower down the main straight and get past Verstappen. However, he's just burnt a lot of fuel to do that, and he will then have to now really try and save that fuel back. However, Verstappen could then turn up to defend, but then again, he's burnt the fuel, and it becomes really a really good game across the whole race of I want to attack, but it's really going to use a lot of fuel, and I will really need to save that fuel elsewhere. Will someone be able to get me back elsewhere? I just think it would solve a lot of problems, and it's okay. It's not an easy thing to do because it would require a lot of investment from the engine departments. But if you said that from 2014 onwards, we'd have had these engines for years. I don't really understand why they've said you're only allowed to use this much fuel per second, whatever it is, and working out to be a similar amount across the race. It's a bit less, but it's similar. Why not mix it up a bit? I was also a fan of KERS back in the day. That was a lap by lap version of a similar sort of idea. What do you think of that idea, Rwaggy?
I don't think we need to make anything that drastic. I mean, we're probably having the worst. We're probably timed this conversation for the worst time ever. Because, like we said, we've got the new regulations coming in next year, so they are actually trying to do something obviously different. And I think that the regulations that are coming in next year will actually be pretty good. I don't think there are going to be any issues at all. I actually think it's going to make the racing so much better. The problem for me is, like I say, once you've got that tyre sorted, the tyre issue sorted, and you make it mandatory to have 2 stops, I think the racing will become so much better.
So I don't think we should do mandatory 2 stops, because I love. I think
we should.
The idea of a driver like Perez, really eking it out. I think it should be the tyres should absolutely target a 2-stop, and in the races where they don't achieve, most people doing a 2-stop, real questions should be asked of the tyre manufacturer. Well, you've messed up here. That's not what we've ordered. We ordered tyres that would do this. Because I mean, also if They've got 5 tyres. They were using the 3 hardest tyres on this track. All you have to do is go 1 step lighter, and that probably fixes it. It's not like we're asking to reinvent the tyres.
I've got the best idea for you ever. You ready?
Oh, yeah, hit me. Tinfoil hat, where is it?
Mazepin on pole every race.
Well, I would genuinely love to see reverse championship order races. I would love that, because that would also force the teams to build a car that can follow. Mercedes wouldn't build a car that can't follow. They'd have to build a car that can follow. But you just want Mazepin at the front. Mazepin, then Hamilton, then Verstappen, then Bottas.
I just want Mazepin at the front so he gets more penalties.
Raggy, I'm going to have to stop sending you these sheets because you're doing segues better than me and it upsets me. But do we need harsher grid penalties? So we saw... Well done, Raggy. Yeah, everybody's proud of you. Yeah, I'm giving away his I'll give away his tricks there, haven't I? That I sent in this sheet beforehand.
Thank you.
So obviously we saw Mazepin in qualifying. We had a bit of a traffic jam at the end of Norris's Q1 lap. We saw that Mazepin go, well, if you're not going to go, I'm going to go, and effectively just leap right in front of Norris, and really affected him to the tune of, well, it was at least half a second. Really quite held him up. Forced McLaren to use second set of tyres. Yeah, not good. He got a penalty for it, which is right. However, it was a 3-place grid penalty when he qualified in last place. He did also get 1 point on his driver's license, on his super license. Do we need to do something different to that? I think we do. I think that's so silly. It's so silly. I mean, especially to someone like Mazepin. I'm going to put it kindly and say he would willingly break the rules. No, that's too harsh. I don't mean it quite that harsh. I mean he's the sort of person that doesn't mind breaking the rules. Let's put it that way.
Well, he's got nothing to lose, has he?
But exactly. So he's now going to see that and go, oh, well, in which case, I don't care. And I'm not saying he's going to do it on purpose next time, but I'm saying it's not a deterrent. The point of having a grid job is to deter someone to doing it next time. He's probably going to be last in most of the races, all of the races this season. We need to do something different, I think. My idea, again, with all the ideas, I'm loving it. This is just becoming Alex and Rwaggy's wild ideas for how to fix F1 when it's not broken. I love it. But my idea for this is to every grid penalty up to a limit that you're not able to take should be an extra point on your super license. So super license, I think it's 12 points. You get 12 points and you get banned for a race. This is why there needs to be a limit, because if someone takes a whole new engine and it's a 20 pace grid penalty and they're starting last, you can't just then ban them from that race. That's not quite fair. However, that would fix that particular problem whereby people do just put in new parts sometimes when they're back, because they would then get points on the license and risking a ban potentially down the road. So Mazepin got one point. Those 3 grid places, perhaps you say up to 3, 4, 5 penalty points from your grid penalty. You give him an additional 3 points on his license. Now he's got 4 points on his license. He probably should have got a few before this. I don't know if he has. But then then it starts to really quickly build up, and then it's a real deterrent for him, because now he's going, oh, I don't want to get a race ban at 12 points. I really need to be careful here. Something like that. To me, there needs to be a deterrent. Raggy, hit me with your idea.
This is the problem that I can fix for you, mate. All right.
I'm ready.
If you can't lose any more positions, you start from the pit lane. Problem solved.
So if I qualify 18th and I get a 3-place grid penalty, I then have to start from the pit lane.
I think that's unfair. No, I think if you've still got places to lose, then you just start. You take all those places that you possibly can. But so yeah, if you start 18th, for example, and you got given a 3-place grid penalty, you just start last, right? But in Mazepin's perspective, obviously, having him a 3-place grid penalty is like chucking water on him when he's already in a swimming pool. There's no point, right? But making him start in the pit lane would then fix his problem.
Is that too harsh, though?
No, absolutely not. Because giving him a 3-second penalty for something that could have caused a crash, to be truthfully honest.
All right, hold on. It's not too harsh on Mazepin. Would it be too harsh on Perez if he qualified last?
In general. No, I don't think it is. I think giving people grid place penalties for part swap outs is, I wouldn't say bad as it is, but I think that's already bad enough. And then I think giving them, I don't think you should be giving people a start from the pit lane for part changes, but if it's for behavioral things like this is, then absolutely starting from the pit lane is absolutely.
So one of the issues with
perfect.
that is that if you remove your car from parc ferme, as in you are able to change your setup, change parts, you start from the pit lane. So inherently, by allowing to start from the pit lane, you're also allowing the team to change your setup and potentially put on race-specific parts.
Well, yes and no. Yes, you can physically, but obviously, I was giving the solution as a high level. Wasn't meaning to go too details with, but I mean, realistically, it's just pretty simple. They just make it so they're not allowed to work on the car. That's pretty, the bread and butter of it. Because when they go for that outlap, that formation lap, right? He just drives into the pit lane, drives right to the end of the pit lane, and just sits there whilst everyone else is on in their grid boxes.
At what point does it stop? What if I've taken some new power unit components, I've got a 10-place grid penalty, and I qualify 19th?
Well, no, but this is what I'm saying. Only for behavioural problems, not for part changes. So if you have a part change and you were 19th and you had a 10-place grid penalty, fine, you just go P20. That's it, right? But I'm talking behavioural, where safety is critical, because right now, yes, he got a penalty point in his driver's license, on his super license, and I guess in a way that is a deterrent in that respect. It's not really physical enough for him to really give a damn, to be honest, and he's not going to notice it. Whereas if he was forced to stay in the pit lane at the start of the race, he would have felt it more, because he would have immediately been 8 or 9 seconds behind everybody else.
So what I like about my idea is that it includes the engine penalties. It also deters teams from taking extra engine penalties because they're near the back anyway. To be fair, they did introduce some sort of rule a couple of years ago to help that.
You're going to harm the racing doing that, though.
What do you mean?
That's because if you're punishing somebody for swapping out a car part because they're worried that they're going to have a retirement on the track, you're effectively taking them out of the race, right? Do you know what I mean? Because they're going to then go.
No. So yes, I agree with your idea, but I mean, I suppose I'm saying that's why I prefer my idea, because you give them points on their license up to say 3 per event.
I see. Sorry, yeah.
So there's
I thought it was in about
There's a genuine punishment up to that point, because again, let's say he did a couple of things in practice and he's got a sixth place grid penalty, but then let's say he qualifies 19th. With your idea, because he's lost 1 place, that's fine then. But who cares if you lose 1 place? When you're 19th or 20th, it doesn't really make a difference. But this is what I like about my idea, is that if it's a point per extra grid penalty you didn't take, it's relative, whereas yours is a bit, you're in the pit lane, you're not. It's a bit one extreme to the other. Tell you what I'm going to do, so I'm going to put it to the chat. I want you guys to vote. You have to choose one brand new rule in F1. It's either Rwaggy's idea, whereby if you're qualify last and you get any sporting against the driver grid penalties, you have to start from the pit lane. My idea is any untaken grid drops that you have goes as points on your super license. What do you think, guys? Put in chat right now. Put either Alex or Rwaggy and vote who you think, which idea you would include in F1. This little widget here is going to look at the last 60 seconds of chat, and it's going to give us the top 5 most used words. So put either Alex or put Rwaggy in chat to vote for mine, which is license points. To vote for Rwaggy's is start from the pit lane.
Oh, look at that. Oh, it's beautiful. I love to see. That's fantastic.
Look, right, we're going offline.
It's a landslide. Did anybody see? I saw 2. I'll give you that. There was 2, look.
I'm not.
Just sign me up to F1.
How do I? Let me just. That's better, isn't it? That's lovely.
I can't see what you've done. I gotta wait.
Yeah, but you'll enjoy it.
What did you do? Did you hide me? Yeah, there it is. I'm winning, even if people are spelling my name wrong. I want to point that out.
Look,
like you don't know what he's talking about. Hey, Warren.
It's fine. It's absolutely fine. I've taken it really, really well. But anyway, next week will be a different guest on this particular stream. We're having someone that won't beat me in a vote. But anyway, guys. Anyway, let's move on to that point, as I've just lost unceremoniously. We are going to move on to the driver of the day. And unlike the week before and last week, where I essentially stole the driver of the day, I've not even put in the sheet what my driver of the day is, because I gave Rwaggy a proper first dibs on driver of the day. Take it away, Rwaggy.
Well, I actually think you're probably going to go for the person I wasn't going to go for. I'm actually going for Verstappen, because in all honesty, I think Verstappen could not have done any better than he did today. He gave it absolutely everything. He had a fantastic send into turn 1. For me, it was a very high risk. He almost caused a huge crash between the two of them, which would have been mental, and we would be having a very different conversation right now. But Very well executed from him to achieve that. I think Hamilton also got to give him a shout out too there, because he had
whoa. Driver. Singular.
Yeah, okay. But I wanted to just throw this out there because I didn't want any Hamilton haters to misunderstand what I'm saying. Right? I do think Hamilton also did read the situation very well and did avoid that crash, because that was all on him to avoid that crash. But Verstappen, fantastic from the word go. Really nailed it in towards turn one. His tyre management was good. His race pace was fantastic. And I think ultimately the only thing that let him down was strategy, and that wasn't even his to control. So I think overall he did a very, very good job. He deserves it for me. And I just wish that we were in a position where they were allowed to just race constantly as hard as they wanted to, without having to worry about their tires just suddenly dropping off a cliff or explode. I mean, don't get me wrong. If anybody's seen me ever commentate any league races in F1, you know I'm a big fan for punctures. I love to see explosions on their tires, but at the same time, I would like to see them scrapping each other out more than anything.
Well, tune in next time for Rwaggy mentioning 19 drivers, so I'm left with my driver of the day as Mazepin. But
were you also going to go Verstappen?
No. I actually wasn't. What I want to do actually is throw that back at you and say, why not Charles Leclerc then? Same logic. He drove a perfect race. He got past Bottas in turn 3. Yes, he ultimately got back past, but
is it really anything to shout about? Let's be honest.
Verstappen didn't overtake anyone.
Well, that's not true. He did. He just didn't end up keeping that position.
Oh, no, it's turn 1. No, he did in turn 1. Yeah, I did in turn 1.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And that was the overtake of the race, let's be honest.
All right. Mine is Hamilton. It's got to be. To be honest, I thought Rwaggy was going to Hamilton, but, I mean, it was just a great race, wasn't it? Similar to Rwaggy's reasons, really. It was just, he did everything perfectly. One key thing for me is he trusted his team. You know, he said that he was the lap he was going to come into the pits for the second time, which he did. That was the closest he'd ever got to Verstappen, because Verstappen got traffic. Although I think Verstappen might have gotten DRS too, so maybe it wouldn't have worked out. But he was very tempted to stay out at that point, because he thought he maybe could have got him for the first time in the race, just on track. He still came into the pits despite and throwing away his best opportunity for the whole race to overtake him on track up to that point. He trusted his team, and that is a sign of the great, fantastic working relationship that they've got between them. And obviously just a phenomenal race. Arguably, could have defended better, to be fair, against Verstappen. I think, Verstappen did briefly tuck back in going into turn 1, lap 1. He could have defended a bit harder. Again, I think he's thinking about the championship. Tried to hold it on the outside of Verstappen. I think he could have potentially been more aggressive there, but there probably would have been contact knowing Verstappen. So, it's just, to me, you just can't say fairer than his drive. Again, though, honourable shout out to Charles Leclerc. But that brings us nicely, though, onto our next point, which is our honourable mentions. They're a little bit shorter this week. Previously, I've been a bit too generous, I think, with my honourable and dishonourable mentions, just listing the whole field in one of the two. But this is genuinely a bit more of a list of people that genuinely deserve a proper shout out. But first is Charles Leclerc, because I've put a really solid day, very comfortable 4th. I mean, he was ahead of Bottas for a good time. Great move around the outside of turn 3. It wasn't the first time we've seen it, but brave to do it nonetheless. Certainly in a car that's got less downforce than the Mercedes. Really quite annoyed Mercedes today, which is a good job considering the car isn't really there. And was always a distant, in a good way, 4th. By the time Bottas got past him, there was nobody anywhere near him. And bear in mind, we've seen that's the first race this season that Ferrari's beaten McLaren. Ferrari's beaten a McLaren. The lead Ferrari's beating the lead McLaren in the race. So, great race. Really good race by Charles Leclerc. We know he's a great driver, but stunning race today. Daniel Ricciardo I put as well. So he was actually my dishonourable mentions last week, but he was also some of your guys' driver of the day last week, interestingly. But for me, Ricciardo today, great job. I put starting to find his feet at McLaren, ? Emphasis on the question mark, because the last few races, Norris has finished best of the rest. Ricciardo wasn't quite there. He did get beaten by Leclerc. I should have the results up right now. Hold on. Here we go. So Ricciardo was actually in 6th. So he got beaten by Perez. He got beaten by both Red Bulls, both Mercedes, and Leclerc. So I would say it's not as good as Norris has done in the past. He was beaten by Leclerc by tune of 20 seconds. But certainly, a good race from him. Really solid. We didn't see him much, which is a sign of a good race. So hopefully he can continue that form. I think Norris had a bit of an off week this week. And then finally for me is Perez. I thought apparently he was a bit unwell yesterday. I think he qualified in 8th. Ended up 5th, which on a track that's really hard to overtake. Good drive. made an epic move around the outside of, who was it? Was it Ricardo? It was, wasn't it? Epic move in turn one around the outside of Ricardo. Really late on the brakes, got it slowed down. I was really impressed with that. So for me, a good recovery drive. Overall, not the weekend Red Bull want from him. He needs to be up there with Bottas to put a thorn in Mercedes' side. But apparently he was unwell yesterday, so yeah, we'll give him this one. But a good recovery drive today on a track that's hard to overtake. Raggy, any honourable mentions to add?
Just touch on yours a little bit. Agree with Leclerc. Agree with Ricciardo. Perez, I don't agree with. I think it's finishing behind a Ferrari. Yes, I get that it's a difficult track to overtake on, but still finishing behind a Ferrari, which is, that in itself is quite bad, I would say. I think Perez, and especially a Red Bull specifically, should not be finishing behind a Ferrari. I think Perez really needed more. I
think the field spread is why. I mean, look, Ricciardo finished 20 seconds behind Leclerc, and then he was stuck behind Ricciardo for I think, over half the race. So I absolutely believe. I mean, previously this season, we haven't seen field spread quite that big. So I do think he was hampered by that more on a track that's hard to overtake, which is why I've got him up there. Because, yeah, on a track like Monza, I agree, not good enough. Wherever you qualify, you should be finishing top 4 in a Red Bull. But I think this track, I don't know, he's up there for me. But fair enough, you're entitled to your incorrect opinion.
That's the benefit of the world we live in. You can have an opinion even if it's wrong. I think I wouldn't put him in the dishonorable mentions, but I would say that Perez, I wouldn't really necessarily shout out about him. I think he just had a relatively okay day. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying about Ricciardo. I think it's really good that he managed to achieve the P6 that he got today. But yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, we're going to touch it in the dishonorable mention. I've got one for dishonorable, which I'll add later.
I'll let you get on the set. I just want to add that I accidentally did you dirty there. I thought your comment was going to be about 2 seconds long, so I put in the dishonorable mentions. And with that title up the top, you mentioned both Ricciardo and Perez, so now it just makes it look like you're just throwing shade at them for no reason. But I'll let you go to your actual dishonorable mentions now. Go for it.
All right, Lando. I don't. The defense that he did was pretty poor. Obviously very nearly ended up with a very bad collision on his hands. It's not, don't get me wrong, it's not like the worst thing in the world. I mean, we saw Grosjean in Silverstone, I think it was like 2 years ago, where he defended very hard and almost caused a couple of major incidents between them, but luckily the other drivers have got insane reactions. But it's still quite a dangerous defense. His pace in particular was pretty lacking. He just seemed to be really struggling on this track. Maybe it's a track he doesn't like. I don't know. But either way, I expected more from him, especially with his recent form. He's definitely got more in him. And I don't think we saw anywhere near the best that he's got today. And that's the reason why I put him in dishonorable mention. I think he just left too much. Left too much at home and didn't bring enough with him to the track today.
I agree. Very much an off weekend for Norris. I just looked at the last race results. He finished 51 seconds back in the last race. Annoying on the F1 website, you don't get a gap when they're a lap down, but he was a lap down. So that's at least 30 seconds slower than he was, maybe not quite, at least 20 seconds, if not 30 seconds relative to the front compared to last race. So yeah, a weekend to forget for Norris. I mean, it's great, by the way, that we're saying he was only had one car between him and his teammate in 8th place, and we're saying that's a really bad weekend. It shows a sign of both his and McLaren's progress. But I guess with that progress comes some expectations, doesn't it? So yeah, for me, my dishonorable mentions are here. So I obviously Mazepin, he's always got to be up there. I actually didn't include him last week, but he should always be up there. I've just put still miles off Mick. Again, we still don't have the gaps at the back, but looks like he wasn't that far off Mick because he was within a lap. But I think it was over 50 seconds again at the end. Again, didn't see any spins on track, but if he didn't have any spins, that's arguably worse because he's just horribly slow compared to his equally as rookie teammate. Yes, his F2 champion teammate, but they're both F1 rookies. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, he's not going away anytime soon. But really bad weekend from him. I genuinely, I don't like him, obviously, but I genuinely wish that he was closer to Mick, just so you can go be like, oh, he's obviously a horrible person, but he clearly deserves to be an F1 because he's actually got some decent pace. But it's just showing he's a horrible person. He doesn't even deserve to be an F1 in the minute, which is just so annoying. But
agreed.
Anyway, I've also put Alonso because really faded at the end.
Just before you go to Alonso, I want to touch on Mazepin real quick because I actually want to point out this was his best race so far this season. In
terms of gap to Mick?
Gap to anybody.
Was it?
And he spanned the least in the quali and the race. Obviously, in practice, that was not necessarily the same, but I'd say this was his best weekend so far, and it's still a dishonorable mention.
Did Mazepin get top 5 driver of the day, Sonic? Is that confirmed? Because I know during the race we only get like top 3, didn't we? He did. The trolls right force, I love it. I've also put Alonso for my dishonorable mention. 17th in the end. He qualified 10th, I'm pretty sure. Let me just grab that up. Qualifying. Yes, 10th. He qualified 10th. Pretty good quali. Alpine doing fairly good. Ocon in particular up in 5th. Still got a way to match his teammate, but an okay quali. Looking like they had half decent pace. They both faded in the race, to be fair. It's not like it was just Alonso. Ocon also faded to 9th. But 17th. I mean, they didn't employ Alonso to get beaten by Ocon, right? I mean, Ocon, don't get me wrong, good driver. But they would have been expecting Alonso probably by this point to be at least on par with Ocon, or there or thereabouts with Ocon. Qualifying to say he was 6 tenths down in Q3, 2 tenths down in Q2, about the same in Q1. I think they need to be closer. And this race in particular, I mean, failing to 17th, it should have been higher than that. It's just not good enough from Alonso. He needs to really, 2-time champion, needs to find his feet ASAP. Speaking of multiple champions not doing very well, Sebastian Vettel, obviously. Actually, both Aston Martins actually finished where they started, interestingly. Both started 11th and 13th and finished 11th and 13th. But Vettel beaten by his teammate. I mean, again, that is Aston Martin did not hire Vettel to be beaten by Stroll. Although Stroll's, daddy's little angel in the team there. Realistically, they're not paying millions for a 4-time champion to be beaten to be their second driver. Why would they do that? If they wanted to do that, they'd hire someone else. Hulkenberg springs to mind straight away. Where is he? Vettel he's only 10th down on Stroll in quali, to be fair, about the same in Q1. But not going forward in the race, still getting beaten in the race. Qualifying you can take it with a pinch of salt, especially when they're less than a 10th. You go, well, look, it's one lap, whatever. In the race, though, you do expect them to get the better of Stroll. I do think Stroll's surprised a lot of us, definitely me, and he's a bit of a better driver than what I gave him credit for in his first season or two. But yeah, Vettel just not good enough. Just because he's a 4-time champion, that's not what he's there for. Raggy, any other dishonorables? Tsunoda.
Oof. Obviously, the engine wasn't his fault. I'm fine with that. I take that. But his attitude in the qualifying was shocking. Outing his team in the way that he did is a very unprofessional manner. And I get that he's already a character in himself, and that's cool, that's awesome. But let's just highlight what happened. So I genuinely thought I misheard this, and that's how bad I thought it was, and probably also why he's not my dishonorable. After he qualified and got knocked out in Q1 by a 10th, he said, "Oh, this car's so bad," over the radio. Again, I heard it twice, and I still thought I misheard it. I was like, surely a rookie in his third race or whatever it is has not just said this car's so bad when his teammate's up there. I think, Raggy, I don't know if you've got a bit of background to this. Was it because he thinks Gasly's been given a different spec of car? He didn't say that, as far as I could tell in his interview. He basically was just complaining about the car, but I think he'd already been given a spanking by the time he got a chance for the interview. Because the impression I got was that he just couldn't handle the car, which screamed to me that Tsunoda was struggling with the setup he'd put on the car for this qualifying session. I mean, I honestly wasn't expecting much more from him in the race, I'll be honest. But and then when he came to the actual interview, he seemed to be like he had his tail between his legs and kind of still acting like a bit of a bad boy, but kind of just trying to
corporate hat on a bit more.
I think he got beaten up a little bit for it, and I think realistically he deserves it. He should not be slaying his team and his car in the way that he did, even if it was the car's fault. Regardless, you can't be just shouting about the team like that, especially when you think about your other team and colleagues that are out and about, across the world, helping make this car a thing.
I completely agree.
It's just a real kick in the teeth.
Yeah, I will say I love his fire. We do get a lot of people in F1 these days that are very media trained, and they just sort of say the right things all the time, and it does get a bit boring. And that's why we like people like Verstappen and Alonso, because they speak their mind a bit more. I do love his fire. I love that he's swearing over the radio and getting really annoyed at himself when he's messed up. I love that, but I agree. F1 is a team sport. It's inherently a team sport. Hamilton has become, at least in public, an incredibly good team player. Always bigging up his team. when he hasn't got the best car for that odd weekend every now and again, he's sort of saying, we need to work at it, but he's not saying like, oh, the car was rubbish. Which by the way, Verstappen pretty much said as well. Verstappen got a bit fired up and was like, yeah, just he was almost a bit too negative, I thought. But yeah, Tsunoda's comment was just not acceptable, especially not from a rookie. I mean, come on, someone like Alonso is still not okay, but it's a bit more like, well, okay, yeah, he does deserve a better car, and like you've probably made some promises in the background, and you can GP2 engine, you can see his frustration, but still not great. But for a rookie, no, absolutely not okay. Like, you've got a lot to learn yet. You haven't earned the right yet to blame your team. What you should be concentrating on, assuming you've got an identical car, is your 3.5 tenths down on Gasly, which, by the way, isn't bad. Gasly's a good driver. But that's what you should be concentrating on. Sorry, guys, I just couldn't get them as much out of the car today, which should have been the response. Not, this car's rubbish. Can't get on with this car. That's not the way forward, is it? So, yeah, I agree with that one. Yeah, and actually, he's been a driver that's been in our honourable mentions several times, hasn't he, over the last few races? That's quite a contrasting one there. But anyway, guys, before we run out the stream, I want to get your guys' driver of the day. Put in chat right now who your driver of the day is. Just put their surname. So Hamilton, Verstappen, Tsunoda, Giovinazzi. Put their full surname in chat right now, and we'll see what you guys think who was the overall driver of the day. We'll have our own little vote, just like F1, but this one won't be rigged. It's a little Brucey bonus for you there. Hamilton, Leclerc. Make sure you spell it right, guys. Remember, this is literally just looks at what you've typed. So Hammy is not going to count.
Has to be the same.
Has to be the same. Has to all be spelt right. Make sure you spell it right. Keep the votes coming in. Capitalization is fine, by the way. That doesn't make a difference. Just the spelling is all that matters. The Clerk's winning at the moment quite comfortably, actually.
Yeah.
Just not.
I mean, it wouldn't be incorrect to say him. I think he's definitely in that.
He was
You're wrong. You're wrong, obviously.
He was in our honourable mentions, so we've done all right there. Still Leclerc. I think it's going to be Leclerc that's going to take it, isn't it? What's the question? Driver of the day, Beaker. Driver of the day. Your driver of the day. Put their surname and spell it right. Mazepin. I'm amazed Mazepin isn't up there, by the way, chat. You know, every time we use this, the poo becomes the most used word, Raggy, in my streams. So I'm amazed Mazepin is up there.
Shouldn't have said it, because now it's just going to get spammed.
No, I know, but we've got our answer now, so it's fine.
Yeah, we know Leclerc wins.
Yeah, quite comfortably.
I do also want to mention the fact that Leclerc's won. As you saw maybe in the chat, Stefan had to type Leclerc, and he hates Leclerc. So I get a lot of enjoyment out of seeing him type that over and over again. Thank you, Raven. Appreciate it, mate.
Right, guys. Well, that rounds out this one. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. I actually enjoyed this one a bit more. I feel like we were a bit more controversial, which is always a good way to get viewers on YouTube, isn't it? So perhaps we'll do top 5 most controversial talking points maybe from the Grand Prix, but I just felt like we had a bit more of a chat today. We had a bit more fun with it, I feel like, which I enjoyed more. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it too. We will be going again in 2 weeks' time. The Monaco Grand Prix, that's the current Spanish Grand Prix. The Monaco Grand Prix in a couple of weeks' time. 13 days, 18 hours, 37 minutes and 7 seconds. Self-plug, whenisf1on.com, my own website. 2 o'clock start time, UK time. We'll probably go at a similar sort of time, 2 weeks' time on at 6 p.m. Hopefully Rag will be able to join me. I'll always ask him on the week to confirm whether he can or not. He might be off
Should be there.
Skiing in the Alps. It's classic Raggy.
Going outside. Yes, that's something I do.
Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this one. Catch you in a couple of weeks. For me, though, next stream will be on Tuesday at 7 p.m. for the Schumacher at Ferrari career mode. So join me for that one. I'll catch you next time, guys. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.